Hello and welcome to Above the Curve. I'm your host, Andrew Shrout. I'm here with Brad Nelson.
Hello, everyone.
And Todd Anderson.
What's up?
Todd Anderson returning from Indianapolis, where he did rack up a top 8 in the Legacy Open.
Yeah, delusions of mediocrity.
Oh. I don't know what you're talking about because I played in a Super IQ this past weekend, and I made it to round 4 before I got my second loss.
Snap.
I know, I'm very proud of myself.
Part-time big timer Brad Nelson,
Yep.
ladies and gentlemen. And medium time big timer, part-time medium timer.
I don't know what you're talking about. You top 8'd the Legacy Open, and you didn't even lose a single game in the Swiss. So, like, you went into the final table with all the chips. Sure, you dunked them all off, but, I mean, that happens sometimes.
That's true enough.
It does happen on occasion. Todd Anderson did not actually win the tournament, but we did have some winners this weekend. Let's get to those guys in the winner's circle. There were 2 Grand Prix this weekend, and somehow in 2 Grand Prix, South America managed to fit 4 champions.
Is that true? That's amazing.
Right,
Good job, South America.
Right. Grand Prix Manchester was taken down by Fabrizio Anteri. I'm going to try and pronounce all 4 of these names, by the way, but I make no promises. My poor, uncultured North American tongue might not handle them. Fabrizio Anteri, this is a name that I'm probably going to have to learn how to say, though, because this is his 2nd Grand Prix win in as many tries, actually.
Yeah, it's so impressive.
He won Grand Prix Warsaw a couple weeks ago as well. So locked up gold, I believe.
Yeah,
so.
and what, Great Britain national champion or national?
Yes, he'll be representing England at the World Magic Cup.
I mean, the thing that impresses me the most is that this was in Block Constructed, and Block usually gets a bad rap as being a high variance format, but I'm very confident, and I've been continuing to play it since Pro Tour, that it is one of the most skill-intensive constructed formats you can play outside of all of the, old Legacy and Vintage formats. Like, it is super good right now, and it's super skill-intensive, and it's very impressive to see him take that down after another Grand Prix win. So I'm very impressed with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this is Grand Prix Manchester. I should clarify there. He is originally Venezuelan, but he is currently residing in London. So big win for him. Grand Prix Sao Paulo, on the other hand, taken down by 3 native Brazilians. Carlos Alexandre, perhaps better known as Carlos Barutina Alexandre.
Correct.
The moto grinder extraordinaire. Tulio Huadi, perhaps better known as Tulio Huadi.
Yeah.
Slightly less creative with the moto name, but these are 2 names that old school moto grinders like myself and Brad and Todd, we definitely recognize.
I've been
these guys.
getting yelled at by Tulio Wadi since 2003 Extended or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I used to play him like literally every event.
Yeah.
The best thing is they're both really big moto grinders that I think all of us have worked with at one time or another, or at least like talked decks with them.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
I'm familiar with both of them.
Yeah, I'm in a moto clan currently with Barutina.
Ooh, impressive.
I'm pretty sure I've played him in daily events about 200 times.
Oh, for sure.
In my
He's
lifetime.
in every single one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Guilherme Merhan, their third, a local store owner from the Sao Paulo area. So big props to all 3 of them. In Indianapolis at the Star City Open, we had 2 winners there. We had Riley Curran taking down the Legacy Open. Riley Curran, a master with Little Green Men. This is his 5th top 8 and second win, yes, with Pouncing Jaguar. No, Riley Curran, of course, a master of combo elves.
Yeah.
So this deck is one that has kind of been growing in popularity over the last several months. Riley Curran, probably one of the guys that originally put it on the map, and definitely still representing with it. Big props to him picking up his 2nd trophy. Our winner on Saturday, Justin Crandall, took down the Standard Open with Naya mid-range.
And I feel like when that happened, every single person watching from at home was just like, what? What is this deck? Like, it was such an impressive Naya variant that, like, I'm just going to say that it is probably just the best version of Naya mid-range, just for the fact that, like, it doesn't look like it should work, but he just crushed that tournament.
Yeah.
Just absolutely demolished it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think if Jund Monsters continues to do well, like, this is a very good foil to it because, like, it plays very similarly. It has mana ramp guys, it has a few removal spells, and, like, a bunch of just, like, giant guys that do, value type stuff. Like, you have Polo-Kranos and Stormbreath Dragon, but, like, the Planeswalkers in this deck were just insane. Like,
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about this deck in more depth in the breakdown. Justin Crandall's Naya mid-range. Brad, you said that this was the best Naya mid-range build you've seen.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell me why.
All right, so ever since the Star City Games state championships where Joshua Watts won the Texas states, with his Naya mid-range deck that featured Perforos, a bunch of Planeswalkers. I've been kind of like tinkering with the deck list, and I liked Perforos, but one of the problems with it was against the aggressive decks, it was just you had to take it out, and the Tristani Perforos package was a little wonky. It was a good deck, but I think most of the power came from the Planeswalkers, the removal of the other creatures, and so this version just trimmed a lot of the fat and is just playing a lot of great cards. And the Keening Apparitions are just genius because you have to deal with a lot of enchantments. Blue-white control decks have Detention Spheres. The mono-black decks have Underworld Connections. That's always been their best card against you. You can deal with the demons. You can deal with the Lifebane Zombies. You have enough removal for those cards, but the Underworld Connections can take them away. So having Keening for that against the Jund Monsters decks, you're able to deal with their Coursers, which can give them a lot of card advantage. And the rest of your deck is just a bunch of card advantage in itself. You have Elspeths and Xenagoses that leave bodies after the Planeswalkers are dead. You have Ajani and Chandra that gain you card advantage. And you just have big monsters that put a lot of pressure on people. So I do love the shell in itself, and a lot of times the deck on paper looks really awkward, but the way it plays out is just wonderful. So I think that this version is where the deck should be moving forward, and it's very good against the big 3 decks in the format, which are mono-black Jund Monsters and blue-white control variants. So I'm a big fan of this strategy.
Okay. Todd, what do you think of it?
I mean, I also think the deck's very good. I'm actually very impressed by his sideboard, specifically because it has this weird way to transition against aggro decks where it has Fiendslayer Paladin and Unflinching Courage, 2 cards that are traditionally absurd against both burn or just mono-red aggro. But at the same time, both those cards are also pretty good. Like Fiendslayer Paladin specifically is very good against mono-black aggro, which had a little bit of a spike over the last couple months. As far as the rest of the sideboard, I really like Mistcutter Hydras because those are just the best card you have against mono blue, which even though mono blue's kind of fallen off the map, it's also another gigantic threat against control decks. A couple Magma Sprays to help out against the aggressive decks, Deicide to help out against like Thassa and any other deck that just has a ton of enchantments to go along with your Keening Apparitions. But for the most part, I mean, the deck just feels really powerful. It looks really good on paper to me. When I first saw the list, I was just kind of taken aback. You know, I really was not a fan of these mid-range Courser decks in Standard until, you know, a couple weeks ago I talked about how I didn't like CVM's Jund Monsters deck. But then after just watching him crush people with it and playing a little bit with it myself, changed my tune. And this deck feels pretty similar to his deck, has a lot of very powerful options, you know, going on with it. Like, it's just a very good deck.
I mean, I like the point of Courser, is that Courser tends to not be that good of a card in like the Jund Monsters deck. But in a strategy like Naya, where you have a lot of Planeswalkers, the card advantage is important. Like, you get a lot of board stalls, especially like you saw in the block format in Atlanta, where there's just a ton of board stalls, and if one player had Courser and the other didn't, the one with Courser would just crush. And I feel like this is the same thing, where you have ways to gain card advantage, but you just play a lot of powerful cards, and because you're a deck with Elspeths and Ajanis, you can go really late. So just making sure you hit all your land drops and getting those off the top of your deck are going to help, along with the 8 temples, whereas a deck like Jund Monsters doesn't have that inevitability. Like, if they fall behind, they have a tough time catching back up. They don't have enough ways to just blow up the board. So the Coursers there don't really do a lot if you don't have a Domri in play. So I think that this might just be the best Courser deck too.
That's possible, yeah.
Okay. Well, is it the best Keening Apparition deck?
No.
Currently, it is the only Keening Apparition deck.
No.
Take that back, sir.
Okay.
I played in the sideboard of Brave Naya.
In the sideboard, sure.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, this is the first time we've really seen this card kind of showcased in main decks. Do we think that's a card that's really going to blow up, or does it fit in other
I hope
archetypes?
so, man. I really wanted to main deck like enchantment removal at the Pro Tour because Born of the God and Journey into Next just put so many enchantments into the format, and I think that like having this Grizzly Bear that has so much utility, like it's good in every single matchup. Every single deck has some enchantment that you want to kill or sometimes even have to kill. So like, it's fine. Like, it blocks and then kills something. Like, oh, nice pack rat. Like, you can't attack for 3 turns or whatever, and now I get to Mizzy Mortgage your whole team. Like,
and that's just it. Yeah, I like cards that have a lot of utility. They're just a role player that also deal with Mutavaults. Trading with Mutavaults is something that you have to do sometimes. And yes, this is a Courser character deck, so you're probably not going to have that much problem with Mutavaults. But I've always just loved cards that can do their job while trading with Mutavaults.
Okay. So Keening Apparition earns your stamp of approval.
Oh, I mean, I had that had my stamp.
We're well past the stamp of approval. Yeah. Sure, fair enough. And you mentioned you thought this may be the best Courser of Kruphix deck.
Oh, for sure. Naya shells are definitely where Courser works best.
Now, I will remind you, Jund Monsters, also a Courser of Krufix deck.
It is, but it's not. You only have 23 lands. It works best with the Domries, but I've been playing a lot with Jund Monsters, and I've been wanting to trim on that card more than any other card.
Okay.
It's fine, and it does its job sometimes really well, but for the most part, you're not a deck with a ton of Planeswalkers. Like, you do have Planeswalkers, but not the ones that win the games.
All right.
So it just sits in play and doesn't really do much.
Sure. Jund Monster is a deck that is kind of emerging as one of the top tier decks in the metagame, and it's a deck that we're going to talk about a little more in depth in the Soapbox. In the Standard Open in Indianapolis, Jund Monsters was all over the place, and it had a lot of success. So my question to you guys is Jund Monsters the new Mono Black Devotion? Do you guys think it's the best deck?
What do you think?
I mean, I honestly think that it probably is the best deck, and I really hate saying that because I have hated this deck for so long, and mostly I just hated it because of my own preferences for decks and deck building. I like to use cohesive strategies. I don't like to just like raw power people to death in Magic. That's not really my style. And so whenever a deck comes along, and it's usually in Jund colors, and it's just all the best cards in the colors, you know, just dominating week after week after week, I hate it. But those decks usually have a significant amount of powerful removal spells, powerful creatures, powerful disruption, and this one's not really that much different, you know? And I've been watching CVM over the past couple weeks just crush people with the deck, and yeah, I mean, I'm a beard believer. I believe in him. So.
Don't you mean a believe-in meter? Because the beard's coming off pretty soon.
I mean, I hope so. Jesus.
A couple of Van Meter believers here.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. For one, I think that irrationally, I think Jund Monsters is the best deck because it's the most difficult to disrupt. Usually, the Jund Monsters deck will tend to fumble the game somewhere, and that's how you exploit it. But I do still think that Mono Black variants are just the best decks in the format, and those are also more of the Jund decks, even though they're not in the colors, because that deck is filled with disruption. I think that Jund Monsters is actually put to the test of having to be the aggressive deck in most of the matchups. It is a mid-range deck where you try to play control, but you can't really control these aggressive decks either. You have to just find a way to win the game, and that's what Jund does best right now, is it just finds an aggressive line and can take it over the course of a couple turns while, you know, building up and being a little bit disruptive in the sense of it's tough to attack through Coursers, Scavenging Oozes, Polo-Kranoses, and Sylvan Caryatids, along with all the removal. But for the most part, it is just a green-red monsters deck that's trying to win the game with a couple good removal spells. And after Cyber, you get Rakdos' Return, which is also just unbelievable.
Yeah. I can make a small claim for Rakdos' Return probably being the best card in the 75. Me and Brad played it in a Versus video last week, I think, and I just, oh no, this week, and I just crushed him 2 games because of Rakdos' Return.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, your whole hand and your Planeswalker, can we go to the next game?
Yeah, it is so backbreaking sometimes. That card is a very backbreaking card. But the thing that that surprised me most about Jund Monsters is actually I drove to Pro Tour Atlanta with BBD, and our entire car ride was me saying that Jund Monsters isn't that good. It's just a fine deck. But I didn't like a lot of the card selection and the card choices that they made. And BBD just kept going like it's probably just the best deck, and I should play, but I'm not going to at the next Open I go to because he wanted to play his Constellation deck, which was also sweet, and I built it and streamed with it, and it was unbelievably fun. I've never drawn so many cards without a blue spell. It was awesome.
Dude, Mana Blue. So I actually watched he was playing a win-and-in on camera at the Indianapolis Open, and I had a moment where I was in BBD's shoes for a second, like in his head, and he had 1 mana up, and it was an Overgrown Tomb with an Underworld Connections on it. He had a Eidolon of Blossoms in play, and he could either tap it to draw a card and pay a life, or cast the Mana Bloom for 0 in his hand. Yeah. And I know he's just like losing his mind because like he taps a green and his opponent starts to write down -1 life and he goes, no, Mana Bloom.
But I was arguing the whole time with him that Jund Monsters wasn't as good as it was. And then after seeing CVM just like top 8 the first Open in the past 2 weeks, I was like, you know what, I'll give this deck a shot. And so I played it all week last week, and it was awesome. And then I took it to an IQ where I ended up just going 2-2, and I was like, well, maybe this deck isn't that good. But then I realized, looking back at all of my testing, that I literally only lost to mirrors. I was X and O on Moto in the non-mirror matches, and I was like 3-13 in mirrors. So I was like, oh, maybe I'm just really bad in the mirror match, or it's just a lot of variance, which it is. But the deck is absurdly good and very powerful, and I think it could just be the best deck, but if it is, it's so close to mono black that it's really tough to tell which one is better. But they're both really tough to push out of the format, and I don't really know how to exploit Jund monsters with a strategy. You just have to exploit their own weaknesses, which is they might fumble the game.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully we'll see some players figure that out at Star City Providence this weekend.
Well, no, I'm just going to dig a hole and put myself in it with Moto for the next 2 weeks. And
no, we're going to find a PTQ to go to.
We could go to PTQ. I want to flight to Honolulu.
I want to play some Modern.
I am finally
Correct,
qualified.
yes.
I'm golden, so I don't have to worry about qualifying.
Yeah.
But
Proud of you, Brad.
Thank you,
Proud
thank
of
you.
Brad.
It's been a lot of years.
Yes.
But I would like the flight. Also, I just want to have a sweet deck for the Invitational, and because I'm testing, I want a new token, and I want to fight BBD in the arena, but I haven't been traveling to enough of these tournaments to have enough points, because, my God, CVM has like 3 times as many points as I do now. I remember when I was ahead of him in this race.
Yeah, many, many moons ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, need to step up on your standard game. But first, we need to talk about Modern, because the Cons of Tarkir PTQ season starts this weekend, and the format is Modern. So let's talk about Modern in the learning curve. Modern PTQ season is upon us. Now I know if I get a chance to play in any Modern PTQs, I know what deck I'll be playing. I'm going to be grape shotting people.
Hold on, and I know exactly how you're going to be doing at those tournaments. Andrew Shrout, please report to your winner box. Andrew Shrout, some of the people are waiting on you.
Yeah, straight to the side events, the old O2 drop.
The old 2, cry in a corner, play winner box.
Oh, we'll see.
While the rest of your car is playing for top 8.
Oh, we'll see. All right, fine. I'm going to be playing Storm, with or without you. What are you going to be playing?
Well, personally, I just think that, especially if you're a newer player, getting into Modern is a little difficult. So I suggest just finding a deck that you like and, investing in it and just playing it for the whole season. Modern's a format where it's much more important to play a deck that you're comfortable with as opposed to playing like the new best deck or whatever deck won the last tournament. But as far as like power level is concerned, my top 2 decks would probably be Affinity and Birthing Pod. Now, there's a lot of different variants on Birthing Pod. You can play Malira combo. You can eschew the Malira combo and just play Spike Feeder and Archangel of Thune. You can even go the different colors route and play Kiki Jiki and Restoration Angel. But for the most part, Birthing Pod itself and all the cards surrounding it, all of the Kitchen Finxes, all of the other combo pieces in the deck are all very powerful cards by themselves, and they just so happen to work really well with this Demonic Tutor plus Dark Ritual every turn artifact out of New Phyrexia. So Birthing Pod, very strong. Affinity, on the other hand, also very powerful. It's kind of like a combo aggro deck. You get to play cards like Cranial Plating and Arcbound Ravager, which when you have access to either 2 black mana or just a ton of artifacts, they're really strong cards that allow you to kill your opponent out of nowhere. I've seen Affinity decks kill people on turn 3. I've seen a creature being suited up with Cranial Plating and attacking on turn 2 for 10 damage. The deck is obviously very strong. There isn't a whole lot of hate for it right now. People have like some number of Ancient Grudge usually. People sometimes have, these 1-for-1 type cards that try to beat Affinity, but Affinity has had a knack for beating these types of cards ever since Arcbound Ravager was printed in Darksteel 10 years ago now?
Yeah, I think it's mostly once we returned to Mirrodin, when we got Etched Champion is where that deck really got its boost. Etched Champion is the training wheels that are essential. And I love when I get to play a deck that I get to say a card is training wheels, but you're supposed to play with it. And that's what Etched Champion is. It's like, sometimes I have no idea what I'm doing with an Affinity deck, but I have an Etched Champion and my opponent just cannot beat it in a million years.
Yeah, I mean, I've played a lot against Affinity in this format, and I'll just have a Tarmogoyf having a staring contest with an Etched Champion, and then they finally draw Thoughtcast.
Guess who gets to blink in that staring contest?
I'm going to guess the Affinity player.
Because you get to attack through.
Yeah. So, Etched Champion, obviously very strong in the archetype. I've seen people play Master of Ethereum, and there are times when the format is very combo heavy, where Master of Ethereum is better because it's a better standalone, or it's a faster standalone threat. However, in a format full of Jund, full of Splinter Twin decks that have Tarmogoyf in them, full of just these generic creature-based decks, you have to have a threat that they can't block or kill. And Etched Champion is fantastic at doing this, and it makes Cranial Plating into an unbelievable Magic card. even though it's already an unbelievable Magic card, it just gets that much better. So my picks for Modern, if you're going to start playing the format, if you're new to it, Affinity would probably be my first choice because it is the least expensive of the two. But assuming you have an unlimited amount of funds, I think Birthing Pod is probably the best deck in the format.
Yeah, I mean, it's won every single Grand Prix almost.
Yeah.
Is it my turn to pick my deck?
It sure is.
All right, well, my pick has changed ever since GP Richmond, where Patrick Dickman made me a believer in Splinter Twin combo. And right now, I think that Splinter Twin combo is, I don't know which variation you should play right off the bat right now, but I think that that is the best deck to play for an entire PTQ season because it punishes bad plays and rewards good plays. And the bad plays come from your opponents because when you have open mana, your opponent should always respect it. Now, only the greatest of the greats will know and soul read when they're able to tap out into open mana. But for the most part, when I said go with 3 mana, they respected it. And they kept up their 2 mana, and then I respected their abrupt decays. But the great thing about the Splinter Twin deck is that it can kill out of nowhere. It's really tough to play against, and it rewards you for playing perfect. So I really love that deck. I ended up going 12-1-2, and the reason I didn't top 8 was because my play mistakes came from taking too long to find the correct plays. And I took 2 unintentional draws in the tournament, but I loved the deck. I felt like I couldn't lose any matchups. And I don't know if Tarmo Twin or regular Blue-Red Twin or Combo Twin or Grim Lavamancer Twin, I don't know which one is best, but that'll evolve as the PTQ format goes, but it's a great deck to play against a random field such as a PTQ because people are just going to play random stuff. You're going to have to get through a field with a bunch of random decks. You're going to see Tron decks. You're going to see like Living Death. Living End, which is, you know, a Living Death variant. That's why I said it.
Sure.
I've been cubing a lot, sorry. But yeah, I think that Twin is probably the best choice if your goal is to not enjoy winning and just the only enjoyment you'll get out of the tournament is winning and taking home the PTQ win and going to Honolulu.
I don't necessarily agree with that. You know, like, yes, the deck is very good, but I actually had a lot of fun trying to find the lines that my opponent couldn't beat. And I think that with most combo decks, like very similar to like Show and Tell and Legacy, it doesn't really seem like, if you're outside watching the game, it doesn't really seem that fun, right? Like, you know, your opponent resolved Show and Tell, put in Gristlebrand, the game ended on the spot, right? But from both sides, it's kind of a guessing game at which point you should go for the combo, trying to play around very specific, hate cards that they could have, counter spells they could have, disruption they could have. And with Splinter Twin is a very similar feeling. You know, you have to figure out exactly how to play your cards, how to sequence them, when to wait, when to not wait. You know, I actually played Splinter Twin when it was in Standard a while back, and I actually wrote a really good article. I think it's a good article. Anyway, sorry. I wrote an article about how when you're playing a deck like Splinter Twin, there's almost always one perfect turn for you to go for your combo. You know, and it's not always turn 3 and 4. It's not always like the obvious turn. There are a lot of times where you need to wait 1, 2, even 5, 6, 7, 8 more turns to find the very specific anti-hate card that you have in your deck. Your one Mizium Skins, your one Ranger's Guile or whatever, Vines of the Vastwood. That was the one that people were playing for a while. You have to find the very specific answer to the very specific hate card that they have. And to me, I love games of Magic like that where the play seems obvious, but once you figure out that your opponent has the right card for to disrupt your combo, playing the guessing game, that's really where I actually just enjoy playing Magic, and it's really fun to play Splinter Twin in a format where there are so many ways to mess with you.
Oh yeah, I mean, I actually, that was one of the funnest times I've ever had playing an Eternal format was playing Tarmo Twin in Richmond. I had a blast with the deck.
Yeah, same.
And Tarmo Twin is much more interactive than regular Twin decks because you have so many different paths to victory. Sideboarding is like this weird guessing game. Like once I boarded out my combo, my opponent like just thought I was going to do that. So then game 3, I just brought it all in against Jun, and Jun just taps out to play like Liliana. I'm like, you're dead. I'm like, thank you.
Nice.
Well, but then again, he's like, what if I had Slaughter Pact? I'm like, oh, you play Slaughter Pact? I really didn't know what I was doing. But no, the deck is awesome, and that would be my pick for the season.
Okay, cool. So Twin, Pod, Storm. We know
Not
what
Storm. Don't Storm.
Oh, fine.
If
Storm.
you want to
still Storm.
look,
though.
I will defend Storm right now for just 1 second.
And that was it.
If you'd like, sure.
It's all right.
Now, Storm's all right. Storm's all right. We know what we would play, is what I'm
Yeah.
getting at. What we want to know is, what would you play? What deck are you excited about this PTQ season? Talk back to us in the forums and let us know.
I mean, the season just started. If you got some crazy brews, you let
I
us
would
know.
love to see 'em.
We'll work on them, man.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Modern right now. I think it's in a really good place. I don't think any one deck is too dominant. You know, like we've seen Birthing Pod be a little overbearing, but at the same time, it's okay to have a deck like Birthing Pod be the deck that's overbearing because it's so interactive with the opponent. You know, there are ways to disrupt it, and you know people play them, and sometimes other decks win.
Yeah,
so.
my favorite thing about Pod is that people are like, do you think Birthing Pod should be banned? I'm like, do you want a format where the best deck isn't filled with 30 creatures? Like, is that a bad place to be? If a format is, if the best deck in the format is based around a creature combo and all you run is like 2 removal spells and this Birthing Pod and everything else is dudes, like, what do you want a format to look like? Storm? Like, that just seems awful. If Storm was the best deck, come on, that would be the worst thing ever.
Storm is the best deck, let's be real. All right, sorry, we're getting sidetracked. Talk back to us, let us know how you feel about Modern, what deck you think is the best deck in Modern. The Star City Games Open Series comes to Providence this weekend. Be there if you can, but if you can't, Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, and myself will be bringing you all the action on SCG Live, so check that out. But as for us, we are all curved out. For Brad and Todd, I'm Andrew Strout. Thanks for watching. Burr, burr,
Peter
burr,
Dinklage,
burr,
Peter
burr.
Dinklage, Peter Dinklage, Peter Dinklage, dun dun dun.
Right. Justin Crandall's Naya midrange. Brad, you say it is the best build of Naya midrange that you've seen.
Yes.
Tell me a little about why.
All right, so ever since the spring Star City Game States, I was in love with Texas State champ Joshua Watts's Naya midrange deck that like featured Perforos and a lot of Planeswalkers.
We just started.
He had sunglasses on the whole.
I'm sorry.
I looked over and I was like, wait, hang on. What the is this?